Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. Glad you are with us. We are talking about who is to blame for the assault on the Capitol. It happened 1 week ago today, and here we are a week later, and the House has just voted to impeach Donald Trump, the U.S. House. We are talking with David Plazas. He is now joining us via Zoom. David, thank you so much for being here.
Ben, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You are the opinion and engagement editor for the Tennessean. You've been on before, and we appreciate you being here again. You wrote an opinion that ran on digital on Thursday. It was in the Sunday paper, the title of which, Tennessee Senators Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty are complicit in the insurrection. And in there you write, Tennessee senators played games with democracy and perpetuated false allegations of mass voter fraud. So you take a very tough stance to what Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty did and their role in all of this. So I guess walk us through how you came to that decision.
Sure. Ever since November 3rd, obviously there have been questions about what the actual result would be. We really didn't know until November 7th, but we've gone through dozens and dozens of court rulings. The Electoral College voted 306 to 232 in favor of President-elect Biden. But even still, because of President Trump's rhetorics and many of his allies, they kept on talking about the fact that this election hadn't been settled when it was. And even just the morning of the electoral vote count on January 6th, we got a message, an email from a press release from Senator Blackburn listing point by point what the objections were going to be. She and others were going to be objecting to certain states' counts and possibly delaying the certification of the result. But then we had the chaos of the insurrection, the angry mob that attacked the Capitol, looking for blood. 5 people were killed, including a Capitol police officer, and they immediately changed their minds without explanation. And so we, as an editorial board, I'm a member of the editorial board, and in conjunction with my fellow members, we crafted this editorial, which I wrote, that basically laid out the bare facts. Number one, there was nothing there, and they showed that, and that was shameful. But that commitment to misinformation and to mislead the public about mass voter fraud is what helped fuel a lot of this anger and this rancor. And while yes, they are those people who attacked the Capitol are responsible for their actions, they were fed a lie, and that's simply wrong. And that's why we use that term of them being complicit. There's a line essentially that says, "Oh, what an insurrection will do to make a senator take his or her oath of office seriously," and it's not meant to be snarky. It's just meant to be factual. Senators take an oath to be committed to the truth, to the Constitution, and to defend against enemies both foreign and domestic. And this was a lapse in tremendous judgment. And while they eventually made the right decision, it's not lost on me or hundreds of readers who I've been corresponding with, most of whom agree that it was the wrong tack to continue this lie.
They were going to challenge the results. Then after the insurrection, they changed course. And I haven't really heard a lot of explanation as to why. I don't know if you have there at the Tennessean. You write in here, the senators were like children playing with matches who only showed remorse after they set the House on fire. And then that other line, oh, what an insurrection will do to make some senators take their oath of office seriously. That would indicate you feel like they weren't taking their oath of office seriously when they kept repeating the misinformation that the election was rigged or flawed in some way. Is that right?
That's correct. So it made to create that contrast because at the beginning, I wrote that they sat in silence there during the final debate and the count where senators were showing them how to be senators, to speak to the truth, do their constitutional duty, understand that, yes, you may not agree with the result, and that's okay, but we have a system, you have to accept it. There are winners and losers in elections, or winners and losers in court cases. And it was incumbent upon them to affirm the American system. Otherwise, you have what some authors have called mobocracy, which is what we saw that day. Those members of Congress, their lives were at risk. They were imperiled. Some members of Congress have come down with COVID-positive infections, being in that one-room case. This was extremely serious. And no, I've not heard any real explanation as to why they changed their minds. I can only guess. Today, Senator Blackburn after the impeachment vote, said she'd hoped that there could be bipartisan cooperation to move forward, which, while is a good sign, still is avoiding accountability for past remarks.
We have reached out at News Channel 5 asking for interviews with both, and we have not gotten interviews. We did just get a statement from newly elected Senator Hagerty just about the impeachment, but it would be interesting to talk to them a little more in depth about their decision to challenge the results and then their decision after the insurrection to not challenge their results. I mean, if they felt passionately that there was voter fraud, then theoretically the insurrection wouldn't have changed that. It does make you wonder, did they feel passionately about it, or was it, as you're saying here, really, they were just playing with fire. They were trying to appease Trump, I believe you write in here, until the angry mob showed up. And so it does beg the question, what was their motivation? Did they know in their hearts what they were saying was wrong? And I guess what's your opinion on that? Do you feel like they knew in their hearts what they were advancing was just inaccurate?
Yeah, I don't know what's in their hearts. I would hope that that's what they thought, but that also creates a cynical situation where you have senators who are doing what's wrong based upon opportunism, and that's simply not right for citizens. You know, we deserve representatives who, yes, will go to bat for the citizens, but at the same time tell us really hard truths sometimes. And I think while I understand the argument of many Republicans is that, 74 million people deserve to be heard, 7 to 8 million more people voted for President-elect Joe Biden. This is how our system works. And not only was there a massive difference in the popular vote, but there was a significant difference in the electoral college vote. If one remembers, in 2016, while President Trump won the electoral college vote, he lost the popular vote by some 2 to 3 million votes.
So Senator Hagerty's statement was about the impeachment again. At a time when the United States needs national healing and a true commitment to the rule of law, the American people should not look to their legislators, not to deepen partisan division, but to bring us together. There are 7 days to go in the president's term, and he is fully committed to a peaceful transfer of power. So he's essentially saying it's wrong now to move forward with impeachment. But again, we have reached out asking about their kind of where they stood on this whole shift in their position, and really to get a comment about what happened up there with the riot and the insurrection. And we have not heard back. And I guess that's what you're saying. You have not either, right?
No, I have not. And it's interesting, one of the sad realities of this insurrection and this impeachment vote is that suddenly most members of Congress agree that President-elect Biden is the legitimate president of the United States come January 20th. And that's how it should have played out for some time. The impeachment happened. It is our system. There's an impeachment from the House, and then the trial comes in the Senate, where the Senate decides to convict or not. And no president has been convicted in the last two presidents to be impeached: President Andrew Johnson in the 19th century, President Bill Clinton in the 20th century, and of course President Trump twice in the last couple of years. And I think it's important that if people are committed to bipartisan cooperation, which I hope they would be, that they also have to be committed to accountability and to justice. This is important. We have to abide by unity in the sense that accountability and justice under the law. If the rule of law is not respected, then essentially it's chaos.
So as we were coming on, you asked if I had watched some of the debate today, and I think I watched some of it. It was fascinating. And I know a lot of our viewers probably watched a lot of it. It was certainly on many of the cable channels. And again, just fascinating. And it was interesting to see the Republican arguments, interesting to see the Democratic arguments, interesting that 10 Republicans agreed that President Trump should be impeached. And even those who didn't on the Republican side had some severe criticism for the president. You're going to be writing about all of this tomorrow, right? And kind of, can you give us a preview? Kind of what are some of your thoughts after having watched all of this today?
Sure. One of the things that I've been doing over the last several years, I've been leading a campaign called Civility Tennessee, which is about promoting and encouraging civil discourse. And so the question of is unity and our civility dead I think that comes constantly up. We've had numerous points of inflection, including the impeachment vote and the insurrection from last week. And what I'm going to be exploring is that very topic. How do you get to a point where we can talk to each other and disagree publicly? Because that's essential to making democracy work. We don't have to agree with each other, but we have to agree on some common facts. And we have to get past this gaslighting of each other, be it from the commander-in-chief or be it from elected officials. It's not acceptable for either Democrats or Republicans. And I think that that's how we strengthen and sustain democracy, is just by being accountable to each other and to our system.
When you talk about we have to agree on some common facts, that's true, but that's also scary in a time when people just don't seem to agree on some common facts. And maybe this is a wake-up call. But yeah, you do. You have the president who was saying over and over again, and our two U.S. senators who were saying over and over again, the election was flawed, rigged, stolen, whatever incendiary word you want to use. And then you have others in their party saying that's absolutely inaccurate. The secretaries of state of those states that they said were rigged, saying that that's ridiculous. We can't agree on basic facts, and we have conspiracy theories and that kind of thing. So in the midst of all of that, how is there room for optimism? Would be my question to you. When we talk about can we all get along, can we bridge this partisan divide?
Yeah, I think it starts from a very grassroots level of neighbor to neighbor, whether it's a kind word or working with each other, going to a Metro Council meeting together. And I'm encouraged very much by one happening this week. Vanderbilt University announced a new center for American democracy and unity, which launched, chaired by John Meacham, the Pulitzer Prize-winning historian, former Governor Bill Haslam, and also Summer Ali, who is the CEO of Millions of Conversations, and now is a professor at Vanderbilt. So there are efforts to try to help people come to those conversations where they can understand those facts. One of the things that I found as I interacted with many voters and many readers over the last several weeks is that people kept on questioning the big steal. And I kept on pushing back. What does that mean? It's like, well, you have Dominion. And then, okay, that's fine. And so USA Today, our partner national network, put together a series of more than 80 links of fact checks, everything from the votes in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, the Dominion question, all these things, and consistently found that even if there were some glitches, even if there were some, very minor irregularities, for the most part, this election was fair and it was free, it was transparent. People have the right to question, to look, whether it's on the website or call their elected officials. But as President Trump tried to do, where he tried to bully the Secretary of State of Georgia to change the result, that's wrong. That's illegal. We have a system. We have, it's almost like you are constantly trying to change the outcome of something that has been won. The courts couldn't do it. The voters couldn't do it. The Electoral College couldn't do it. Now it seems the only remedy was the events of the last week or so, which is unfortunate because violence is not the answer. We have to find a way to peacefully discuss our differences and come to some level of agreement when it comes to governance. But at the same time, we're a government where if you are in the majority, you have the right to set certain rules, and hopefully in consultation with the other side.
All right, I'm going to start taking calls in a moment, but one other question. So you talked about, the big steal. There were these slogans. There were elected officials putting this all over their Facebook page, the big steal, the election rigged. And then there are newspapers and media organizations that are putting out fact-by-fact sort of analysis of things to refute those sort of incendiary comments. And I ask you, do you feel like that is sinking in? Do you feel like it was sinking in? It has sunk in? It's beginning to sink in? Or do you think people are just going to walk around and forever feel like it was stolen?
It's tough because, one mantra that I go by is facts don't change people's minds, but relationships can. And it takes constant conversations and quelling of doubts, because a lot of people have felt hurt. They've felt that they haven't benefited from American prosperity. We were right now in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so people are scared. They're scared of loss. They're scared of many things. And the question is, when you say something long enough that's untrue, people will tend to believe it. And the notion is to basically show this is how I got my information. So as a journalist, it's incumbent upon me and my colleagues to be very open to explain our process and also to answer questions. And if we can't resolve a question, to get an answer as best we can. it is challenging right now. The big facts that we have to understand is that we have a system that worked. We had a court system that worked, and people may say we don't like the result. Justice Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina said, but he accepted it because that's the way our system is. It's
fascinating. Facts don't change people's minds, but relationships can. And I think that speaks to why something that is seemingly absurd on Facebook can gain traction, because it's coming from some friend or some person that you think you trust or like or whatever. And so no amount of facts can kind of combat some of the misinformation that you're getting in some other places. And I think that's a great line and one to remember. All right, let's start taking calls. Let's go to Jamal. Hello, Jamal.
Hi, Ben. How you doing this evening?
Doing well. Go ahead.
I want to compare the Democrats and the Republicans to like the NFL. You have your favorite team, I have my favorite team, and when they're playing, bad calls can come about and change the course of a game. But I'm not going to stop watching the NFL because bad calls have been made. It's how we move on after those bad calls. The game must be played. America's a game that's never going to stop. There's always going to be differing sides in this country. But the thing is, Trump went past and the Republicans went past with this political posturing, trying to show us all the democratic process with a smoldering keg up under the field. And see, somebody has to pay for that because lives have been lost, American lives. And a Confederate flag was waved, which would be considered in any other country a war against us, because the American flag is the only flag that belongs in the Capitol. And so these lives that are lost have to be paid for. If that was my brother, I would want that president. Charles Manson incited people to kill people. They locked him up for 30 years. Forget impeaching him. The Department of Justice needs to come forward and put him up for murder.
Okay.
And that's the only thing about it. I mean, because some people have been murdered by this man's insightful smoldering of a powder keg in this country.
All right, Jamal, thank you. You wrote in there, David, in your opinion piece, the angry mob didn't manifest itself as black men and women demanding social justice. And of course, you're talking about the Black Lives Matter marches. You're comparing it with that from earlier in the summer. You wrote, it appeared as a horde of angry white men and women carrying Trump and Confederate flags as they stormed the U.S. Capitol, describing who was there. Jamal, yes, I think, touched on that. But yeah, what do you think about what Jamal is saying? And I thought that was interesting what you wrote there.
No, I think he's absolutely right when it comes to the Confederate flag. My understanding from what I've read is the Confederate flag has never made it into the Capitol before. So this was really an assault on our democracy and an assault on our values. We know how the Civil War was won, and even though it's a very problematic post-Civil War legacy, we're in an era right now where we are reckoning with our past, across the country, not just in the South, but with the Confederacy, with systemic racism and so forth. And that's really important. This was a reaction to that anger. And some of it may have been intentional anger, some of it have been made out of fear. I will say, on a lighter note, I like the NFL comparison, because imagine if Mike Vrabel said the Ravens didn't win this playoff game. We won. Find us the points so that we'll win and keep on going to the playoffs. I mean, that's how it felt in many cases, and that's just not how it works. One team won. I wish the Titans would have won, but I accept the result.
Right. Okay, Jamal. All right, very good. Let's go to Ann. Hello, Ann.
Yes. First, I want to apologize to you, Mr. Holt. The last time I called in, I was rude with you, and that wasn't merited. It was frustration because of political family frustration.
Don't you worry, Ann. I don't. But thank you for that. Go right ahead. Don't you worry.
I agree with everything that was in Mr. I'll say his name wrong. Your article. But I paid attention. I watched the entire day today, and many people are going to pay for what transpired last week. And an impeachment was the least of what Donald Trump needs to be held accountable for. And I think that it's going to come out that there were congressmen, and there were House of Representative people, and there were security guards, and there were numerous people that knew something was going to happen January 6th, and they were also complicit in what happened. And that's a shame, because if all it would have taken was the words, "I'm sorry, Joe Biden won the election, and we'll try again in 4 years," and Donald Trump couldn't bring himself to admit he lost the election fair and square. And this is how it ended up, and that's sad.
Right.
And I'll leave it at that.
All right, Ann. Thank you very much. What are your thoughts, David, about what she said?
Yeah, and I think she's absolutely right, because we have a long history of peaceful transition, peaceful transfer of power from the first president, George Washington, who wanted to ensure this country would be sustained by having those peaceful overtures. You know, in the Constitution, there's no specifics about how you're supposed to do it. There's no requirement for a concession speech, but it's become a tradition because it shows voluntarily that someone has said, "I did not win, and I will work to sustain this democracy." One of the most difficult cases, and often has been described as the best speech he ever gave, was of Al Gore Jr., who ran in 2000 against George W. Bush. And that was a contested election that went into the courts for many weeks. And finally, at the time, Vice President Gore said, "You know, this is our system, and I accept it. Our courts have spoken, and I will affirm it, and will accept President Bush as the president." And that's important. That's an important step, because, as Ann said, you know, President Trump could have just said, "I didn't do it this time, but I'm going to ramp up again." It's been done before. Grover Cleveland served 2 non-consecutive terms. He was the 22nd and 24th president in the 19th century. So there is a precedent for that. And there is no precedent for a president getting impeached twice. So this is definitely a first. And in many ways, it's a sad day, because I don't say it gleefully. I mean, this violence is terrible. It's tragic. And we shouldn't have gotten to this point. You know, there should have been a peaceful transfer of power, because if you think about it, none of President-elect Biden's cabinet picks have gotten any hearings in the Senate, and the inauguration is just a week away.
That's a good point. Yeah. Let's keep going to the calls here. Let's go to Rita. Hello, Rita.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call, and kudos to you both, Mr. Hoff and Mr. Plaza. I enjoy you on Channel 5, Mr. Plazas, on his editorials in the Tennessean. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks.
And I'm very opinionated. So, first of all, I think we're all born with a moral compass. That's the way God made us. And it's up to us as individuals to do the most that we can with it. Number 2, I think not only should Trump be impeached, he should be jailed, and he should be charged for the damage that was done to our beautiful house. It is unexcusable. I lost a friend of 40 years because I told her, "Really, you're going to vote for Trump?" She has not spoken to me again. It's so silly that people cannot come together and talk about something as simple as an election. You know, so kudos to you both. Thank you. And as far as what role did the objectors play to the electoral vote, I think they just added fuel to the fire.
Right. Okay.
And I thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rita. Boy, somebody who's lost friends, and there's so many people that have a similar story like that. And so you hear her opinion, and what you write in the editorial, Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty are complicit in the insurrection. Every caller so far agrees with that. And so then my next question is, all right, if they're complicit, then what is the consequence? Is there any consequence for being complicit? For the president, he's been impeached. Is there a consequence for the senators, like our 2 senators? Should there be? Will there be? What are your thoughts?
Well, right now, there are very few ways to get rid of a sitting member of Congress. Congress can expel them, their individual House, and at election time, voters can choose to vote for somebody else. They can also choose to resign. So the options are very limited. It's not like you can recall a senator. My hope is, I want an explanation, as I mentioned in the editorial, for what happened. And if they're going to shift into being, they have actually a real big problem, the two of them, because on the one hand, they already had their critics on the Democratic side. Now they have a lot of Make America Great Again critics who feel that they stabbed President Trump in the back. So they've got some reckoning to do themselves, and the question will be, how will they do that? I've been a critic, and I've been open about the fact that I'm not happy when politicians will say something a certain way on television and social media and then be a different way in public and in person. I mean, people have the right to change their minds, but they should explain it, and they should also be consistent and not try to add fuel to the fire. To echo Rita's point, and she's absolutely right. I've seen people who have blocked each other, on Facebook, who refuse to talk on Twitter or even in person, have lost contact with family members simply because of politics, and it shouldn't be that way. We've got to lower the temperature somehow, and that's really tough. One of the ways that we have been able to do it through this campaign is and it's harder now with the pandemic, of course, but get-togethers, and we still have virtual get-togethers every now and then with folks where we will discuss issues and set rules for ourselves. That is, if we're going to discuss a tough topic, no cussing at each other, no disrespect. Make your point. You can argue. Sometimes these conversations will get messy. That's just democracy. It's messy, but you do your best to listen and then to respond from an informed viewpoint or a respectful and empathetic viewpoint. All
right, I'm going to ask one more thing, then we'll go to a break, then we'll start taking more calls. There's some conservatives who think now we're going too far when we start taking the president off of social media and their campaign contributions that aren't going to certain Republicans, and the concern is on the part of some that we're going too far. What do you think about that? Does that worry you? Is freedom of speech in danger here? And if you watch certain news outlets, they would tell you that's the case. Are you worried about going too far to punish some of these people, or kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we have to separate the freedom of speech issue, because remember, the First Amendment prohibits the government from censoring political speech from citizens. Twitter is a private company. It can censor whoever it wants. Now, I wish they would be more consistent about the way they enforce the rules, because that could set a bad precedent. And ironically, when it comes to campaign contributions, this was an issue that was brought up during the Citizens United case in 2010 of the Supreme Court, that the court considers campaign contributions free speech. Those corporations have a right to withdraw and to give as they wish, for better or for worse. Our campaign finance system, in my opinion, requires reform, requires transparency, because we don't have enough of it, and that's a problem. So yes, to answer your question, it is problematic, but none of it is stifling the free speech of Republicans who are being punished by this. There's a choice, and Donald Trump essentially again and again flouted the terms of service of Twitter and Facebook and Google and Instagram, and was finally punished for it.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back, continue the discussion. We have Reverend Fuzz. We'll get to you. Lucy, we'll get to you. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.